Seneca was right. He who examines the bridle and not the horse is a fool. Similarly, he who values a man based off of his clothing and his social position is an absolute fool. Now, he said this over 2,000 years ago, but today it stands more true. In life, we need a North Star, something to always guide us, something to keep us grounded, something to work towards, so that essentially we can become the best version of ourselves. When I think of people like Steve Irwin or Fred Rogers, these great people who are admired for their character, and they're admired for the impact they had on this world. I mean, you just look at Steve Irwin, the passion he had for helping animals and conserving wildlife. This is because he had his North Star. And if you look at all the great people you admire, they had a North Star that no matter what pops up in life, any challenge, any desire, any thought of acting upon vice, they had a North Star that guides them through smoke, guides them through the fire. So they're always working towards this best version of themselves. And in this modern world, we've put the wrong things on a pedestal. Now we're clout chasing. We want followers. We want likes. We're chasing expensive brands because we want to be like the people that we've put on a pedestal. Essentially what we need in life is a North Star. But what we've created is a flame. And we're the moth, and we're going towards that flame, and we will just keep burning ourselves and burning ourselves. And the brighter and brighter we build that flame, the more and more we get burned. So, how do you create a North Star? How do you create something to always work towards? How did the Stoics create a foundation of character that can never be broken? And how in this modern world can you actually find the correct job for you? The correct direction to go in? Because the Stoics never talked about occupation, but in this modern world, we do need an occupation, unless you're very rich or you have rich parents. So we'll start with this little thing called virtue modeling. When I was a lot younger, back at school, I wanted to be like Aragorn. I watched Lord of the Rings all the time, the extended edition, of course, and the behind the scenes, and the director's commentary, and the actor's commentary, all that kind of thing. You know, if you're one of those people, you know how good it is. And I always wanted to be like Aragorn. I thought he was such a nobleman, courageous, brave, just such a great leader, which was the polar opposite of me. I was shy, a coward, weak, not a leader, certainly. I was like a sheep that was also too scared to follow anyone. And I wanted to be like Aragorn, but I didn't know how. And we went on this school trip. It was a religious school. Went on a school trip and, having all kinds of fun. And then they give out these bracelets that says, "What would Jesus do?" And the idea is when you don't know what to do, when you're in the dark, or you're confused, or you're scared, you just look at your bracelet and you think, well, what would Jesus do in this moment? And I thought this was a great idea, so I wore that bracelet. And I used to ask, what would Jesus do? But then I decided to start asking, what would Aragorn do? And it really helped me in life. And this is the idea, actually, that the Stoics talk about called virtue modeling. And I wrote about this in my book, actually, on how to do it in depth. But the concept is you create like a mood board or a list of people you admire and the characteristics that you admire about them. So it could be people you know, like teachers, their passion for teaching, how much they cared for their pupils, your mother, your father, how loving they were, how enthusiastic they were, how proactive they were, or even, like I spoke about earlier, Fred Rogers, he was one of mine. I still admire him for his passion he had to teach the youth. And Steve Irwin, the enthusiasm he had for his passion, his get up and go energy. And then I even have Muhammad Ali for his courage and bravery. So I put these people before me, and I still do this to this day. I'll make a list, and I often meditate on these people, just thinking about their characteristics. And if I'm ever stuck, I think, what would they do? And it's such a strange journey you will experience, because you put these people before you and you're like, I want to be like Aragorn. They can be fictional as well. I want to be like this person. I want to be like this person. And you just, every time you're like, should I act out of anger to this? Should I be a coward on this? Just any time you think, what should I do? You think, what would Aragorn do? What would my father do? What would my uncle do? What would my teacher do? What would the very nice bus driver do? And then they guide you a little bit. And at the start, it's kind of hard to shift your character towards theirs. But over time, you keep nudging it, and you become more like this character. You still remain yourself, but you become more like this character. You're creating part of a North Star. And it's like that tale of the wagon in the mud. If the wagon keeps going through the mud, it starts to dig a track over the years, and it becomes the easiest track. It becomes very smooth for the wagon to flow through this. But of course, the wagon wants to take a new direction, and you want to take a new direction. You don't want to keep acting the way you've been. You want to start acting like Aragorn or whoever. Sam's a good person to act like. I think he's a true hero, a true man. And you want to get out of this mud. The first few times it's going to be very hard to get out of the trench, and then you're carving a new path, and it takes a long time to carve this new path. But in time, you would have carved a path that's easy to flow down. And this is actually happening in your brain. Neuroscience, you're creating new synapses, because your brain uses the synapses. I don't know how the science works too much, but I've read about this. And it's easier to go down this path. It's instant. It keeps firing. And to form new synapses, which you can still do even into adulthood. We only believed only kids could do this, but we can still do this. You can always change your mind and the way you think and your character. And eventually, you develop a new way of thinking that becomes very easy to you. So like I did with that What Would Jesus Do bracelet, you can do that with a picture of your admired one on your phone, on your wallpaper screen, a little list you carry around with you, however you like to do it. And I will recommend loads of ways, but ultimately it's the way that is easiest for you, the way that just is always in your face. If it's a note that you always look at, if it's your wallpaper, whatever, a picture on your mirror, anything like that. So, in this modern world, of course, we have occupations, we have jobs. And I know a lot of people, I teach people how to have your North Star, and they're like, yeah, I get how to be a good person. I get how to be like Jesus. I get how to be like Aragorn. I get how to be like Boromir, whatever. Boromir's a good dude. He's just misunderstood. I get all this, but I still need a job. I still need to pay the bills. How am I going to do that? Well, lucky for you, I heard the best piece of advice ever on finding your job, on what you should do for your life. And it gives you a route there, everything. And I heard this from an astronaut, and I think it is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard. I used it myself. But first, I'm going to explain another thing, is you need to learn the essence of God. This is first and foremost, before finding your dream job, before acting and pursuing a goal, for pursuing a dream, for working towards anything, you need to understand the essence of God. The Stoics teaches the essence of true good, that virtue is true good. Everything else is indifferent besides vice. Now, virtue is, in modern terms, simply put, justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. And then its opposites are vice. Everything else, like money, fame, respect, noble birth, all that kind of thing, that is indifferent, and it just depends how you use it. So you can use money for good or bad. You can use health for good or bad. You can use noble birth for good or bad. But the thing that decides, your inner world that you control, that decides to use money for good or bad, your inner power, that's where goodness lies, in virtue. So you must always remember to act out of virtue. So when I'm going to tell you how to find your dream job and pursue a worthy career, I'll teach you that. But you need to understand, you need to always act out of virtue, because we see a lot of famous chefs, a lot of famous directors, a lot of famous billionaires, and they're not good people. And they lose their character to pursue this dream. They lose their goodness to pursue greatness. And the main thing I learned from Marcus Aurelius is that there is no greater pursuit, no more noble pursuit than that of being a good man. Marcus Aurelius, although he was the great emperor of Rome, the last great emperor, the philosopher king, he was the last emperor to serve during Pax Romana. This guy, his main goal was just to be a good person, not to be a great emperor, but to be a good person. And we always have to keep this clear as part of our North Star. So we have how we want to be, we have goodness, and then we have our goal. So how do we do this? I remember when I was younger, I was looking for a career. Because when I was at school, actually, I won an award. And that award was Steady Eddie. And the teacher invited me on stage to win this award. And he was like, do you know why William gets this award? And everyone was like, why? It's such a terrible award. But he says, when it was careers day, I asked William, I was like, what do you want to do when you're older? And he said, I don't know, not really bothered. He says, do you want to do this? I don't mind. So I says, do you want to be a builder? And he says, okay, I'll be a builder. And he says, what sort of building do you want to do? Do you want to do bricklaying? He goes, okay, I'll do bricklaying. And anyway, William just accepted whatever I offered to him, wasn't bothered, didn't care what happens in his future. He was just unfazed. And so I went straight into labouring from school, and that didn't go so well. I love labouring, love digging holes, love laying bricks, that kind of thing, because you see the progress for you it's very satisfying work, especially digging holes. It's awesome. But I had a bad boss, and I was illegally underpaid for a very long time. But then I got a job with a good boss, and it was great work, a great bunch of people. But that wasn't my dream job. So partway, I get a bit lost, and I'm like, what do I even want to do? Anyway, I'm watching this interview with Chris Hadfield, the astronaut. And he says, I've got the best piece of advice for anyone who wants to know their dream job, anyone that's lost, this is how you do it. I'm going to tell you your dream job, how you can get an entry into that job, and how you can eventually get to the dream. So he says, when you walk into a bookstore, you just walk into a bookstore, don't think about it, what section do you walk to? What section are you naturally drawn to? And for me, I was like, I always go to film, travel, philosophy. I kind of skip everything else out. Recently that's changed, but that's at the time I was like, I'll go to travel and I'll look at the travel stuff, go to film, look at the film stuff, they're on the same floor, then go up philosophy, look at the philosophy stuff. And that was it. And it says, this is your natural interests. This is, if someone just scatters a load of interest in front of you, this is what you naturally veer towards. And I was like, I never thought about that I'm interested in film, philosophy and travel. That's the books I'd like to go to. But sure enough, he was right. And then he says, you want to research, find out jobs in these fields. Jobs right at the top. So if it's, if you're interested in, let's say, cooking, you always go to the recipe books. So there's jobs right at the top. What's right at the top? The Gordon Ramsays of the world, famous chefs, Michelin star chefs, whatever you decide to put at the top, your end goal where you're like, I want to get there 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. So he says, you look at that. And then you look at the entry-level jobs. So I was actually working in a kitchen in Australia for a while, and I started out as a cleaner, then a kitchen hand, then a sous chef, and kind of like worked up there, and then I left the country forever becoming head chef, which would have been cool. That's a cool restaurant. But you look for the entry job, and then you enter. You find a way to enter. So if it's a kitchen hand just cleaning dishes, then you enter a restaurant and you go in at that position. And then he says you just research how to work your way up. What skills do you need in order to do the next step? So for me, from cleaner to kitchen hand, I needed to learn a bit about the kitchen, preparing the dishes, that kind of thing, listening to chef's orders, needed to learn the recipes, that kind of thing. So on my walks home, because I'd walk, it was about half an hour, it wasn't a home, it was a hostel, I'd walk from the restaurant all the way through Martin Place, I love walking through Martin Place, all the way to the hostel. And I would have the recipe thing, the menu of the recipes, and I'd just read through it all the way home. I'd read through it until I remembered. I'm very terrible at retaining certain information like that, so it took me a long time. But then I learned how to do that. And then one day, one of the kitchen aide, he quit, and then I got offered the role because I knew I could fill the position straight away. And then from there, I was practicing as much as I can. Luckily, this great guy called Wendy, one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He was about the same age as me, and he was working 2 jobs in Australia. He was from Indonesia, I believe, and he was sending money back home, and he was working 2 jobs, like insane hours that like 20 hours a day, something ridiculous. And he would even get back to his apartment where he was staying with a few like people in a similar position, and he would like cook them dinner. He'd practice his recipes. It was insane. Most amazing person. I can imagine he's doing very well for himself. He wanted to open up a restaurant and get his family out there. Anyway, he was a great guy. He used to call me Legend and used to call me Thor. So that's what I like most. But in my spare time between cleaning and preparing stuff, I just asked him for advice, and he taught me how to like cut vegetables. He would give me, he said the best way, get loads of green peas, the long ones, and he said just get loads of them and then practice your cutting. And I got very good at these kitchen skills because of him. And then when one of the chefs left, can't remember the way it worked, one of the chefs left, then Wendy got up, I took Wendy's position, and then I got there. And if I stayed there long enough or decided I need to go to another restaurant to learn new things, I would have progressed. So you're always just learning how to step up. But honestly, this works. For me, look at the position I'm in now. I'm working in a film studio, teaching philosophy and traveling the world. Travel, film, philosophy. Because I took the steps. And I'm sure in 10 years I'll be in a much different position in line with those steps. But I'm always following my North Star. I'm always following virtue. That is the most important thing. So if someone comes along, and this happens all the time, I just make sure I'm not missing any points. Yeah. The reason I'm back with a bit of passion teaching more and more, because I did lose a bit of the passion because I felt like it was falling on deaf ears. I felt like it wasn't reaching anyone, like the YouTube account was just reaching anyone. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. It's not reaching anyone. I need to reach people. But then I seen these Instagram accounts. Don't worry, I'm making a point about this. Seen these Instagram accounts that were teaching philosophy, got the trust of millions of people, and then they sold out to OnlyFans, market OnlyFans content, market gambling content, which there's no problem with these things. But like people can earn money in certain ways, but to gain trust in people who are looking for guidance through philosophy, if you follow me and I'm teaching you about Stoicism, teaching you about living in accordance with virtue and moving away from vice and the negative passions, then I will never subject you to the things I'm promising to keep you away from. And these Instagram pages, they promise to help, and then they sell out their page to OnlyFans content, and they start marketing it everywhere, and they keep it up for 24 hours, then they delete it, but they get loads of money. I just think it's horrible, and I'm like, I want to fight this. I want to go against all that noise. It's disgusting. The amount of stuff I'm seeing on social media, the North Stars that are being created for the youth, it's just, I see a problem there, and I want to create new North Stars for people that they can work towards and see people that have admirable character traits rather than just nice fancy things. Like Seneca said at the start, or I said, quoting Seneca. But the point is, I have been grounded in virtue. So I get offered these a few times a day. I get offered lots of money that would be helpful in my life to sell out to these things, sell out, just ad space. It's only 24 hours, your fans won't even mind. You deserve to make a bit of money. I will never sell out in that way because it goes against my North Star. So I'm still working towards my goal. People think, oh, Stoics can't have goals. Yes, they can. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. Epictetus was a slave turned philosopher. He was very famous. Seneca was a Roman billionaire. He tutored Nero. You have lots of these Stoics that moved into politics and fought good fights. And Marcus Aurelius was on the battlefield. And the point is, you can have a goal as long as you keep your virtue and working towards that goal. Does that make sense? I actually wrote about this on Substack. I've just got started on Substack where I'll be writing long articles because I don't know if I've told you, I write every day. I'm writing hours every day, and it ends up nowhere. It's mainly just writing ideas down that's going to be for the book, but a lot of it just gets pushed aside because I'm writing my thoughts down, just getting them down, and like, where does this end? Where does this end up? Where does this end? It's never going to end until I'm dead. But I'm writing all of this, and it's never reaches anyone's eyes. So I've been recommended to make Substack, and what I'm doing there is this writing every bit, like every so often, some of it that I think will be a good article. I condense it a bit because my writing's a bit messy when I'm just getting my thoughts down. I condense it so it's readable, and I put it on Substack for you to read. And I'll also be sharing other things there soon, but it's free, it's fun, I don't know, it's educational. So hopefully you like that. So go check out my Substack. And I just want to say a huge thank you before you leave me here today. Unless you click on the next video, then you'll see more of me, which is like these kind of videos. Is thank you for everyone leaving reviews for my book, The Everyday Stoic. It's just been great reading the reviews, and it's helpful for those who want to pick up a book on Stoicism and they just want a better look into what it is. I think it's always nice to learn about the book before you buy it, because I've often bought a book, been disappointed, and I wish I just had read a review that told me what the book was properly about rather than what it's been marketed as. So anyway, thanks for the reviews and have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. And like I said, the next video is there. So either click that video or head over to Substack or go out and live your life.